again, everyone. We are back for, I don't know what hour this is, but here we are. And I am joined by the wonderful Kate Caliendo. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me here. So excited to be here with you all.
Yes, we're so excited. So I'm going to pass it off to you for the hour.
Okay, awesome. Hi everyone. Thanks for being here. So what you can expect for the next hour or so. So I've recently written a book of Lowhorn Etudes. It's been a project a couple years in the making, so I'm just really excited to put it out there.
Oh, let
Oh,
me
let me
mute my other.
Okay, really excited to put it out there. So I'd love to talk a little bit about my history, how I came to write this, and the inspiration behind it, um, as well as the intent of writing it, what I hope that people will be able to get out of playing them. And then I'd also love to play some examples and tell you a little bit about all of the musical allusions and stories behind these pieces. They all have pretty silly titles. I think they're pretty silly, but there's usually a story there or some sort of a process cue. And then questions. And yeah, feel free to put questions in the chat. We'll have time for questions at the end or as we go. So yeah, super excited to be here talking about this. So a little bit about me. I'm second horn of the Jacksonville Symphony. I've been there since 2016. And before that, I was fourth horn of the Houston Symphony and fourth horn of the San Antonio Symphony before that. So had a lot of years sitting in low horn chairs in orchestra. So there's definitely a lot of just automatic influence of all those Beethoven second horn parts and Strauss, all those great works, all the low horn parts. That's kind of like automatic in my composition style, I think. Got my master's and undergraduate degrees at Rice, studied with Danielle actually for a year and John Turman, lots of great horn players there, and studied with Bill Vermeulen there. And I'm originally from New Jersey, where my dad is actually a band director. He might be here today. I think he was gonna try and stop by. So hi, Dad, if you're here. And oh, they're waving. Thanks. So that was kind of my first introduction to music when I was really little. I remember he had made me little music flashcards, half note, whole note. And I'd love to say that these etudes are my first real foray into musical composition, but actually I think my first composition was a little piece of scrap wood from the garage, and I had taken some markers and just drawn little half notes and whole notes and rests, quarter note rests. Those were tricky. And I handed it to my dad. I was like, "Can you play this?" I was so excited, and he was very patient and tapped something out on the piano. Thought it was super cool. So that was probably my first composition. So I've come hopefully a long way since then. Yeah, so how I got into Lowhorn really started in middle school. It was pretty early on. I started playing in fifth grade, and by middle school, my teacher I was studying with had assigned me the Bordoni bel canto studies, which you might also know as the Rochu books. Just great lyrical low horn bass clef playing, and also the Bach cello suites, the Wendell Haas version. So I loved those because I could play them forever. And if my face was a little bit tired from rehearsals or practicing, like, you can play those just almost indefinitely. So it was a great outlet for me, and I really got into the lyrical nature of playing down in the low range and just how free it can be and all the things you can do. And I mean, you really have all the technique that you think about for the high range, like all those lyrical solos and fast notes and all those things. You can do those in the low range too. And I think the best way to do that is just literally to do it. So I got really comfortable kind of playing down there before I realized it was supposed to be hard. And it just became something I really enjoyed to do. So that's kind of the inspiration behind these etudes is 20 years later, I'm still playing Rochu and the Bach cello suites, and I've also added in some other things I found along the way. Marty Hackelman's etudes are great, and the Reynolds etudes, I tend to prefer the bass clef, the low Reynolds etudes, but they're all great. And I just thought, wow, it would be so great to have something else to play that's in this range, something lyrical, something that has a melody, something that has a tune where you can really get into the music of it. And so that's how these etudes came about. It was basically me writing something that I wanted to play, and that I hoped other people would enjoy playing too. I figured if they had something that they really could just get into the music, it would help them get better at Lowhorn without even really thinking about it, or just enjoy playing low if it's something that you already like to do. So with all of my experience with orchestra music, that was a huge inspiration. And when I started writing, actually the first piece, I think I started writing it, and I had just been teaching a lesson on the Franz Strauss Concerto, and I was like, this is such a good piece. And I had never really worked on it, so I was enjoying playing through it. And then I started writing. And of course, my favorite Lowhorn solo piece, probably many of you, it's your favorite too, is the Neuling Bagatelle. And I had played that on a graduate recital and just thought it was awesome. And so the very first etude in my book is a Bagatelle for F Strauss. And it's kind of that like lyrical, early romantic, or is it early romantic? I'm going to say it's early romantic, but romantic Franz Strauss style, with all of the like technical acrobatics that you'll find in the Neuling Bagatelle. And I thought that was really cool, so I just wrote that one, and then I went on to number 2, and that one came out like a Char March, came out sounding like Mahler, kind of just writing, I'd just kind of start playing and then write it down. I had a big manuscript book, and I would just write it down. And I wrote the second one, and it has like Mahler 3, kind of like echoes of the trombone solo in Mahler 3, which I think is just such a great moment. And that sort of reminds me that there's so much great music written that we don't necessarily always get to play in low horn. Like maybe it's in the high horn part, or maybe it's in another instrument, or maybe it is in our part, but we only have part of the phrase. We don't get to play the entire melody. So really, one of the things I wanted to do with these etudes is give you that ability to play the entire thing. Like one of the pieces I love is the Prokofiev Romeo and Juliet, the suite. And those excerpts are so much fun to play, but they're kind of, they're only so long. So what I did is kind of extrapolate all of that music into something that could be a longer etude for you to enjoy playing and really get into like playing the whole phrase and not just playing a little bit and then stopping. So second one, Char March. And I realized after writing that, I was like, okay, if I don't have a game plan, everything is gonna come out sounding like Mahler and Strauss, because that's just so much what we're trained to do. And I think that would be great. I'm sure people would enjoy a whole book of Mahler and Strauss etudes, but I thought I'd like to include more than that. I'd like to really make it like a sampling of different styles and all the different things that we're called to play, not just as low horn players, but as musicians in general. And I really think that everybody can benefit from these etudes, not just low horn players. They're really for everybody. So after that, I started planning out, okay, well, what composer would I like to emulate now? And so immediately Beethoven Nine. I mean, I'm sure that's the first place that most people would think for big low horn stuff. So Beethoven Nine, and I listened to it. I listened to the Scherzo movement especially, and decided to write something based on that bum-bum theme. So my third etude in here is Ode to Lowhorn, and it's got that bum-bum, bum-bum. It just kind of goes through that, and it also follows the same roadmap as the Scherzo piece. So I thought that was pretty cool. Goes on theme and then different theme and then back to the beginning and then coda theme. So yeah, so Beethoven. And then after that, um, I sort of took a break. I think I wrote one or two more and kind of just hit a wall. I was trying to write a Strauss Etude based on Heftig bewegt because that's one of my favorite excerpts. And a lot of these are, they're kind of excerpt length. They're about 60 seconds to 2.5 minutes, depending on the etude. So kind of like in that excerpt length. And I was trying to write one based on Heftig, and I just could not do it. In my book, there's like all these pages of me starting to write it, and it just didn't go through. And I was like, okay, maybe it's not happening right now. It's not the right time. So I kind of put it aside, had those 5 written and put them aside. So fast forward 2 years, and all of a sudden it's COVID and everything shuts down, and we're home all the time. And I'm living now with my fiance, who's a percussionist and successful composer, and so that was a big inspiration. I see him here composing, and I'm like, I really need to finish this project. So we'd be out on our quarantine walks, and I'd be thinking like, okay, who are all the composers that I would want to write? And I came up with a list of all these composers: Tchaikovsky, Strauss, Debussy, Prokofiev, Shostakovich, Piazzolla, John Williams. And I came up with this list. I'm like, oh my gosh, is this crazy? Like, how am I gonna be able to do this? This is a lot of pieces to write and a lot of composers to emulate. But it was just so much fun the whole way through. I would kind of pick a composer for the day and maybe listen to some of their pieces for inspiration. I'd play through the excerpts for inspiration, definitely played through that Romeo and Juliet, and my favorite Lowhorn moment in Alpine Symphony. That one's so good. And I'd play through them for inspiration, and I would just start writing. I had a chart where I'd keep track of all of the 12 keys, major minor keys, and I would check off which etude, like which key I used in the etude, so that I could make sure they weren't all in like B flat major or A minor or something. So they are pretty evenly spread out among the keys, which means that you will get very comfortable playing in different key signatures with this. It looks intimidating on the page sometimes, you see like 6 flats or 5 sharps or something, but I promise you that it's very playable. I mean, I was playing these as I wrote them, so it works really well on the horn. And once you kind of wrap your mind around the key signature, I promise you, you won't even realize all those accidentals are there. Yeah. So I went through writing like that, and yeah, basically just wrote it by ear and by playing and seeing what would work out really well on the horn. And it's all designed to just be fun and to be an enjoyable musical experience, and to also kind of challenge what Lowhorn can do, and especially soloistically what Lowhorn can do comfortably and beautifully, and just to have fun and build technique without even really realizing that you're working on building technique, because you're just so engrossed in the music, hopefully, because that's how I learned to just be comfortable with Lowhorn. And the titles, so I think they're totally silly titles, and I kind of can't believe that that's what they are, but that's what they are. And they all have kind of either an allusion to the composer that it's based on, or maybe a link to a personal story, like the Debussy Etude is Quatre pneus crevés, which means 4 flat tires. And I had a chorus teacher in high school who taught us mnemonic devices to remember all of our key signatures. And the key of A flat has 4 flats because you have 4 flat tires on your automobile. So I translated that to French because that etude is in 4 flats. And it was like, Quatre pneus crevés. So they all have either kind of hints at what they're based on, or kind of some background stories, which I'd love to share with you as we go. So yeah, so I'd love to play through some of these. I'm just looking at my notes to make sure I didn't forget anything before we launch into some playing. And if you already have a copy of these, you can follow along at home. I'm gonna try, actually, I don't know if I'll be able to screen share on this one, but I can try pulling them up on my screen so that you can follow along with some of them. And I'd love to just go through and show you some of the ones that I think are really cool, and hopefully you'll think that they're really cool. Please ask me questions. I'll go look at the questions and see if anybody has any questions so far. And yeah, it's just so exciting to share these with you. So just thank you for giving me this opportunity. Okay. Oh, hi, Cindy. Looking at the chat. Great. Okay, and no questions. Great. So, not that that's great. Please ask questions anytime, and I'll start playing. So I think I should start with the first one that I wrote, which is a Bagatelle for F Strauss. So it looks like John Turman is asking, could you break down the process of printing out online store? Yeah, I would love to, because that's something that was really intimidating to me before I started, and now that I'm on the other side of it, it's really not that hard. So I'd love to let you all know how easy it is so that other people can do this if they feel inspired to. So I made a website through Squarespace, which I think is what made the Northwest Horn Symposium website, which looks great. So Squarespace is super easy to figure out after your first half hour of being like, oh my gosh, what is this? But so set up through Squarespace, and they make it really easy to just have an online store, and you can offer physical products. So like for the physical Etude books, you can have a physical product. Or for PDF downloads, you can do a digital download, which is super easy. You just upload, a photo, and then you upload your file. So when people purchase it, they get a link for the digital download. So it's super easy. Once it's set up, you really don't have to do much. With the physical books, obviously you have to mail them out afterwards. And I chose to use actually used Staples to print them out, so I sent them PDFs of the finished products, which, by the way, John Turman, I need to give a shout out to him. He is a Sibelius expert. I did all of this on Sibelius. Once it was all handwritten, I put it into Sibelius, and he helped me figure out how to do a lot of things with Sibelius, and putting final bar lines in the right spot, and like, because Sibelius is kind of glitchy and they'll kind of continue bar lines. So he helped me figure out a lot of Sibelius technical stuff. So thank you, John. So once I had that all ready, I just sent it off to Staples and had them make up some prototypes, and we got all the paper and the binding and everything set up the way I wanted it, and then I just asked them to print more. So it's really not as hard. It's really not as intimidating as you might think. Oh, Cindy, yeah, what program? Yeah, so I use Sibelius. Tony, how about the publishing process? So basically that was the publishing process. I wrote it. I had it as a Sibelius file. For the digital downloads, I just I saved the Sibelius file as a PDF and then uploaded that to my website. And for the physical books, I emailed the PDF copy to Staples and tell them exactly what I want, and they print it out, and then I go pick it up and mail it off to the people that order it. So I highly encourage anybody to self-publish. It's a really great way to really feel connected and in control of your work. Thank you. Thanks, Tawny. I had a lot of help, so I'm really thankful to everybody who showed me the way. I had another friend who had self-published some Etude books for saxophone a couple months ago, so I definitely picked his brain too, which was really helpful. Yeah, that's so great. Seeing if anybody has any other questions, please put them in the chat. Yeah, I definitely encourage people to be, yes, I will put my website in the chat. It's very straightforward. KateCaliendo.com. And if we're not connected, I'm on Instagram a lot, so you can always find me there at Kate Caliendo Horn. Of course, thank you. Yeah, the whole process seems maybe intimidating, and I don't have like official training as a composer. My degrees are in music performance, and I've obviously had to take some music history classes and theory classes that have had us writing, modal counterpoint and fugues and everything. But we're all trained musicians, and we all know what sounds good, and we all know what we like to play and what works and what doesn't work. So I would encourage people, write. If there's something that you want to play, or if there's something that you want to see, write it or arrange it. There's so much good music, and there's so much good music yet to come. So just do it, go for it. Just do it. That's what I would say. It's definitely not as intimidating as you might think. Okay. Did I get all of the questions? Let me see. To finish the process, how do you publicize the book? So I have it for sale on my website, and then I, talk about it across my social media platforms and in talks like this, or what mouthpiece do I use? I play a Lasky. What am I playing right now? An 80G. I like the Lasky 80G and the 775G. And I'm playing a Landstro AL2, which I just got, and I love it. I've been playing a Rauch for a long time, and actually I wrote these etudes on the Rauch. And so it was cool to because I knew that horn intimately because I played it for so long and won all three of my jobs on it. And then between the time that I wrote the etudes and published them, I had gotten the Landstro, and I've been playing this now. So it's been really interesting to go in nice into, the Rauchs are great. It's been really cool to go through the etudes now on the Landstro, and it's interesting to see, the differences, and the horns I find to be actually very similar. I just love the sound on the Landstro, and I love the sound on the Rauch, and I find them to be very similar. So that's really enjoyable. And, going through these etude books, which I knew so well on the other horn, it's a really cool way of me feeling like I can get to know this horn. So that's been really cool too. So, yeah. So I'd love to play some that I think are cool, or I can talk through some of the stories behind them to give you the inside scoop. Danielle says, yes, thanks, Danielle. Yeah, okay, so I'm just gonna go in and start with the first one. And I really, honestly, I don't know. Yay, thanks, Josiah. I honestly don't know where these themes came from. Like, I just started playing, and I heard them. I've always had a pretty good ear. I think my parents will tell you, I started picking out melodies on the piano. We have a request for Tango Caliente. I like that one too. Thanks, John. My parents will tell you I started picking out tunes by ear on the piano, like 3 or 4. We had a piano at home, and my dad would teach me the little chopsticks. And oh, awesome, Alicia! I really hope you enjoy them. Yeah, you can follow along. Yeah, so doing things by ears, that's typically the route that I go. Most of this was by ear. And also just like what felt playable on the horn. Excuse me. Okay. So here is, I wonder if can I share this screen? Let me try something so that I can pull these up for everybody. Okay. If I share. I'm not sure this will, oh, okay, here we go. Is this sharing? Yes, okay, great. So everybody should be able to see this. Awesome. So here's the cover page. And we scroll through, this is the PDF copy. So copyright. There's a little introduction where I basically just talk, just a concise version of everything I'm telling you now. And one thing I want to say about this introduction is that, you know, with these etudes, one of the reasons why it kind of took me a little while from composing them to releasing them was because I felt a little intimidated about just how to put in the markings, because I knew how I was playing them. And I wanted to convey as much of that as possible, but I also didn't want to make people feel boxed into, you know, sometimes when we play excerpts, we're like, okay, well, here's the slur and here's the tongue and the staccato and this has to be like this. And I don't want people to feel like that at all for these. I want it very much to be about musicality and phrasing and line and just being convincing. So it's definitely more important to just play what you feel about these than to make sure that you're doing everything on the page. And honestly, there are some of these where I still don't know, and I do one slur one way sometimes, and then I tongue it another way. So definitely play what you feel is musical about these. And that's something important to me about them. So, okay, so here's our title page. You can see, oh, if I do that, can you see more of them? No, that's what you can see. So yeah, so these are first half of the titles. The Shiner Bach one is dedicated to one of my teachers, Michelle Baker, who is a Texan who now lives in New Jersey, New York. But so that one is based on Bach, but it also is kind of the theme of the Yellow Rose of Texas. So that's a pretty fun mashup, I think. And yeah, it's not a tuba. That's another fun one. It's in mixed meter, and it's my take on kind of like Incredibles, Mission Impossible soundtrack music. And so one of our favorite movie lines in my house growing up was, "It's not a tuba." And then, so the fact that this is like an action movie soundtrack, I thought that's funny to be like, it's not a tuba. But then there's actually a story here, which I'll share with you now. So I was like taking the bus home from school in 5th grade with my horn case. And, you know, I'm sure you all remember your very first horn case, and it was probably a fixed bell case like mine. So I'm like this tiny little 5th grade girl. I'm like dragging this horn case home and like banging my knee into it on the way to the bus stop and everything. And I get onto the bus to come home, and there was another girl with dark hair, also named Katie. I was going by Katie then. And the bus driver got us confused and thought that I was her. So she's yelling at me and she's telling me not to sit in the back of the bus. And she's like, "Hey, you with a tuba." And so I just get off the bus and I'm crying when I get home. And my parents are like, "Is everything okay?" And the thing that I said to them was, "She called my French horn a tuba." So then we joked about it. It's not a tuba. So that story is definitely what I thought about naming that one. And then you've got all the others. Okay, so here's the first one. So, yeah, okay, so you can see a little bit. And, yeah. Scroll down for you. So that's our first one. Thanks everyone. Thanks Danielle. Yeah, so hopefully you can hear kind of the influence of the Noiling Bagatelle, all those arpeggios and the kind of chromaticism of it, and then also the Franz Strauss, and then I also sort of hear the Oscar Boehm sextet. Oh, thanks, Mom. My mom said bravo. Thanks. The Oscar Boehm sextet, which I think I had played recently after writing it. So yeah, so that's this one. And then just gonna play through a couple more. Let me see if I stop share, can I see questions in the chat? Yes, okay, so now I can see your questions in chat. Yeah, awesome, yay, thanks. Okay, so is it helpful to share? I'll go back to sharing so you can see the music for all of these. Okay. All right. So Char March, I'll just play a little bit of the opening because I think it's so fun. And I'm sure you'll recognize this. And with a lot of these, when I'm emulating a specific composer, I went through and I like got out Mahler 3 and Mahler 2 and all those Mahler parts, and I looked at Mahler's markings or his editor's markings. Thanks, Dad. And I tried to keep the markings for each one very close to what the composer's actual markings are, because that's one of the ways that I wanted to make this helpful for people who are preparing for auditions, so that, you know, working on these, you're kind of getting prepared for your excerpts while you're still thinking like really musically. And when I wrote all of these, you know, when I wrote the first one, I heard a piano accompaniment in the background. And with the Char March, I heard like the Mahler, you know, the strings, ba-bum, ba-bum. I could hear it in the background. So maybe someday I'll write some sort of an accompaniment for these that people can play along with. But for right now, I'm just gonna stick with the one horn line. Yeah, but so, and like the Tchaikovsky one, which so that's and a 4-5-6 is Tchaikovsky, because it quotes Symphony 4, Symphony 5, and Symphony 6. And then a little bit of the Nutcracker, which is where it's like, and a 4-5-6, because that reminded me of, you know, when you're dancing and you're counting something off. Can I see the chat here? Chat. Yes. Oh, okay. Great. Is this the first etude book written by a female horn player? I don't know. I think somebody else has compiled. Rose French. Didn't Rose French? I'm not sure if she's written her book or compiled, arranged things. Yeah, arranged songs, right? Yeah, I think that's Rose's book. So, but at the time that I was writing this, I certainly had never worked on etudes by a woman. So I'm really happy to put this out here. And, I want to be inspiring to other women, and not just women, but everybody. I want to be inspiring to everybody who thinks like, hey, that would be really fun to do. I'm going to try my hand at writing because I think absolutely everybody can do this. Ooh, I'll have to check out those Marian Hesse ones. I'm not familiar with those. Yeah. So definitely, I think the more that's out there, the better it'll be. Somebody's asking, ever have a need to play pedal F or lower on B flat side or pedal C on the F side? Do you mean that one? I always play that on the B flat side. I've never needed to play that on the F side, so I always play that on the B flat side. I think that was your question. Hopefully I answered your question. Okay, so keep scrolling. So here's the Beethoven One Ode to Lowhorn, and you can see that, that bim bum 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 bum. Because in Beethoven we just play it just over and over. So I kind of wanted to make it more interesting than that. So you get like melody here and some chord changes. And then at the end, you still get your challenging, like the end of the Beethoven excerpt. So I know it's not, and my intent was, because I'm thinking, oh, Beethoven 9, the slow movement is the, like the most famous low horn solo. But that's just not what happened for this one. This is what came out. This is what sort of wrote itself. So a lot of times I would have sort of a thought of what I thought I was going to write, and it didn't necessarily always come out like that. But I still think this one's really fun, and it'll definitely prepare you for playing that scherzo movement of Beethoven 9. So this was another one I thought I could play for you all. This is Barber Shopping. And this was actually one I had written before I kind of took a break and had sort of composer's block. And this Barber Shopping one, maybe I'll play it and I'll play it and I'll let you see like what you think. But this one's cool because it's just all kind of mid-range, and then I throw in some stop and boucher at the end. So just a short little one. Maybe it makes you think of the Lowell Shaw, the fripperies and the bipperies and quipperies, and that's sort of what I was thinking when I wrote this one. Just very like cutesy, mid-range. You can get all your mid-range articulation practicing done, and then there's some flutter tonguing and all the extended techniques. And then so then one of the next, I think I wrote that one. Then the next one I wrote, really the one that I was getting stuck on, which is like, oh, where is it? Okay, so before I get to that, so this one, these notes do exist. So this is my take on what would have happened had Mozart written a concerto for low horn, or a concerto for horn in the range of the second horn player. So this is kind of like Mozart, my idea of what might have happened if Mozart wrote something for a second horn player. And it's very much inspired by all of the Mozart second horn parts I've played, and the chamber music and everything. And it's actually in full sonata form. So you've got development and oh my gosh, exposition, development, recapitulation. The development is rather short, but it's still there. So, and I thought this one would be fun. So I'd love to play this one. And I hope you'll start to see that like each one of these is a very different style. So it really gives you a chance to just explore different styles and practice that for when you are taking auditions, so that you can tell a different story with each excerpt or with each piece that you play. And then, as a low horn player, I would love it if something like this wound up as a low horn audition piece, instead of the Mozart, which is great too. So how can you pick? But I just thought this one really is like in the low horn range. So it shows like what people can do in the range of the low horn player. Pause for the page change. So that's my take on a Mozart second horn concerto. Somebody's asking, can you tell the story of the title? Yes. I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Yes. So I was, why is my head exploding? I can hear an orchestra score there. Yes, thank you. I mean, that's what I was hearing as I was writing it. So I invite you, to try and hear that while you're playing. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so I was entering into a horn competition, and I played one of the Mozart concertos. I don't remember which one, but I had to write a cadenza for the first movement. And so, low horn player, and I'm like, cadenzas are supposed to show off what you can do. So I'm like, I'm going to go down to pedal F and do something fun down there. So I did that, kind of similar to like what's here. I don't think it was actually as hard. But so I went down to pedal F and, played my cadenza. It was like, cool. And then I got my comments back after the competition, which, the comments were like, oh, you shouldn't put that into your cadenza because you can't play those notes on the natural horn. And I was like, okay, well, I understand that that's correct, but this is not a natural horn and I want to show off what I can do. So if we disagree on that, that's okay. But I really want to push the boundaries of what we can do on these awesome modern instruments, So anyway, these notes do exist because they do. And they're fun to play. So I wanted to put them in there. So that's the story behind this title. The unnatural horn. Yes, that would have been another really good title. You're very clever. That would have been another good title for this one. Yeah, okay. So, gosh, there's so many others. So, do we have, John Turman had requested Tango Caliente. So maybe I'll play that one, and then maybe there's time for like, probably just time for one more. So I'll play that one, and then if you have any other questions, please put them in the chat. Anything, and yeah, thanks for being here. It's been so much fun just getting to like share this with you and talk about them. So, okay, let me pull up Tango. Okay. Share. Okay, there we go. Okay, so Tango Caliente is number 12, and this is the one that I had wrote based on Piazzolla, which honestly, I haven't played too much Piazzolla. We haven't done that, I've played it maybe 2 or 3 times, arrangements of it in orchestra. But I thought it would be really cool to just try writing in that style, and especially to have like a solo or something melodic and extended to play, not just like 3 bars of solo that you usually get in like a wooden quintet something. So this is Tango Caliente. So that's that one. And it's I have like a lot of kind of the squiggly lines, and I kind of hear them as, you know, like a half valve, kind of like a string player, like a string player gliss, and then just a fall to the last note. So yeah, so that's that one. And I just think of like nighttime, you know, that like dark, hot nighttime. We get that a lot in Florida. It's very humid. I'll point this out too. That was a little theme that was like an inside joke in the horn section when I was in the Houston Symphony. We would always play that during the tuning note because it had come up in like we were doing a pops show and we had to vamp that. We had to vamp it for like 5 minutes. And so for the next 2 years we would just play that every time there was a tuning note. So I threw that in there as a little Easter egg. Yeah, but thank you so much, everyone. It's been such a blast sharing with you.
Thank you, Kate.